Good evening. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. I'll be today's host. And with me I have William Kaiser, who wrote an amazing book called An Optimist Without Hope. And this book is in the Danbury Library. It's well publicized. It's all over the world, and we're trying to give it a little bit more vision, because a little bit more exposure, because it's a great book. The first question I have to ask you, William, An Optimist Without Hope. Are you an optimist or are you a pessimist?
Well, I am neither. I am rather a realist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take it to the feeling. I rather use my logic. When I see it makes sense, then that is my opinion.
Take us back and tell our audience where you were when this atrocity that we call the Holocaust began. Where were you?
Well, when it started, September 1st, 1939, we lived in Łódź, Poland.
Mm-hmm.
It is the second largest city of the country. And I come from a family of 9 children. I was the youngest.
How old were you?
A few of them were married and had children of their own.
How old were you then?
About 20 years old.
20 years old. So you were a young man.
I was the youngest.
Mm-hmm. And how were you taken, and your family, how were you all taken, and where were you taken to?
Well, in the beginning, I actually ran away, unfortunately by myself, into the Russian-occupied territory
Mm-hmm.
of Poland, which was the eastern part of Poland.
Yeah.
But being there, and perhaps a million others, I was a young man, all by myself, no money, no place to go to, sleeping on the street or in a stairway, and I had no work. So I went to an employment office, a Russian employment office, asking for a job. And they said, we have work for you, but we want to send you to Siberia. Siberian woods. We cut the trees, we need the wood. And I said, Siberia? I'm not a criminal. Only criminals go to Siberia. That was the notion.
Probably was the wrong thing to say, probably.
But a little bit longer,
Mm-hmm.
people came from the German-occupied territory
Mm-hmm.
and said that the Germans are establishing a ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am by myself, and the family is over there.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it's very selfish of me to run away by myself and leave everybody on their own. So I smuggled. I did not go. I smuggled back to the German-occupied territory. For Jews, you could not use a train. There was no transportation. It was very illegal. If they would have caught me, they probably would arrest me or maybe shoot or whatever they did to us people. But I managed to come back. And when I come back, somehow the people did not believe that the Germans are going to do that. So we had in Łódź a little stocking factory,
Mm-hmm.
which was working for the Germans. We had a so-called commissar,
Mm-hmm.
who supplied the raw materials, and we do the working. And for that, he gave us food. Money was of no importance. But what do you do with money? So he gave us food. He treated us pretty nice, but not for long. For a short time, because the ghetto came into being and everybody had to move. While two brothers, my father, moved to the ghetto, my mother, my sister, my brother, I, another sister with 2 children, we went out of the German Reich, presumably in the so-called Poland.
Mm-hmm.
But I must give him credit. Of all the countries in Europe, Poland was the only people who did not establish a government cooperating with the Germans. That was only Poland. And because of that, wherever you went in that category, you had the same treatment, the same killing, the same hatred as in any other place. And we were in a town until it got bad. We had no food, and I was a young man. So I volunteered. Before I was arrested, I volunteered to work for the Germans. And sometimes I was lucky to get a slice of bread and some soup perhaps, and I brought it home for the family because they were starving. After that I was incorporated into a labor camp which was called Organisation Tod. This place, they were supplying, loading, unloading, everything for the German army, which I did too.
It sounds more like slavery in a sense than...
No, because we worked with food.
Mm-hmm.
We stole a little here, a little there, and I was lucky to bring home some food, and it was for the family. But it did not take long. In 1941, they took the families and liquidated them and took them to Treblinka, which was a place near the city of Lublin. In 24 hours, they shot them all. And that was the end of my mother, sister, brother, child, and all that.
It's hard to even imagine what that must be like to have your family just slaughtered for no reason. Now, through history, but we know that the Jews have been probably more oppressed than any other group in the history of mankind. We know the pogroms in Russia. We know what the Spanish had their inquisitions, which were quite often carried out against Jews, and we have, of course, in America, we've had the Ku Klux Klan and some.
We
things.
Still have it.
Yeah, yeah.
We have the Nazi Party. We were fighting against the Nazis. So many boys and girls in America died to defeat the evil, and now they are sympathizing with the Nazis. We have plenty of people. It's quite a problem to explain how people can become what they become.
It's mind-boggling. Like you say, it's mind-boggling to think that people can actually allow or condone, let alone take part in these types of things. Now, in World War II, I know that the Jews were not actually the first group that the Nazis took. They took the gypsies, and they took gays, and through that process they began to decide that in weeding out people that they didn't feel like were part of the master race, they began taking Jews.
No, it was not that way. The Jewish problem was written in Mein Kampf, in Hitler's
diary,
in Hitler's book, in Hitler's program. Before the gypsies, and before the homosexuals, and before the communists, at that time, the feeling, the propaganda against the Jews was ahead of everybody else.
Okay.
The persecution by the Nazis for people of their own being came later. When Hitler came to power, there were registered 9 million communists in Germany. But what Hitler did, he took them into the army. He called it Gleichschaltung.
Gleichschaltung.
Gleichschaltung. And he brought them in, and from the 9 communists became 9 million communists, 9 million Nazis.
So he converted them from communists to Nazis.
They eventually, the German nation agreed with him, and they adopted the ideology, and they were very happy. They were happy.
It might have been out of a survival instinct that if they didn't become Nazis, maybe they would have been killed. There was a party for everybody, but they didn't have to join the party. As an individual, you were looked down at, but you didn't have to become a party member. So there was a pressure, but not a demand.
There was a pressure because we must remember that Hitler was elected democratically as the leader of the nation, as the chancellor. And 90% eventually voted for Hitler. In all the history, what we are writing and we are seeing and we are talking, you actually don't have a resistance from the German nation against the Nazis.
How could a nation, as a collective group of individuals, how could they go so wrong?
Well, the question is really a people of culture, a people of industry, music, philosophy, and everything else. Yet, with all the knowledge they possessed, with all the technology, they somehow needed somebody to tell them how to live. And to a point, I think they still do.
The people need to be told what to do?
The people are most happy in Germany when they are told what to do and how to live.
Is that maybe the way people in general are, do you think, throughout the world?
Well, I mean,
or is this just German? And we think of Germans, you know, our preconceived notion of Germans is that they're over the history of Germany, they've been, I don't know, they're portrayed as mechanical, more rigid in their, at least in their structure of their life than maybe some people from other countries are. And maybe that's not fair, and maybe it's fair. But is that how you saw or how you see Germany as being?
When you come back to the German history, when Germany was united at the time of Chancellor Bismarck,
Otto Bismarck, von Bismarck, yeah,
in the half of the 19th century,
yeah,
they always had the mentality of being told what to do. And they always had wars. At the time of Bismarck, the German army came to Paris. Then came Kaiser Wilhelm, the First World War. And how long did it take from the First World War, 1918, to 1939?
20 years, about a generation, yeah.
And there is another war.
Yeah.
And therefore, you see, with all of the intelligence and knowledge, they always had wars. They always have been told what to do.
They didn't skip an entire generation without having a war. They went from the beginning of one generation, and by the time that those people were 20 years old, there comes another war. I had a friend in college named Lorraine, and her parents talked about Germany looking backwards, and we're talking 1970 now, but they're looking backward to the 1940s, and they talked about Germany as being benefiting by the fact that everybody was on the same page. There was this spirit of cooperation somehow in Germany during the 1940s, and that frightened me terribly.
Of course, when you have such a big mass of people united and everybody standing and screaming with the arm raised, Heil Hitler, that is scary. There is power in people. Power, the more people, the more power. And the German people, they believed that they are the chosen people to rule the world. Hitler said, heute Europe, morgen die Welt, which means today we conquer Europe,
tomorrow the world.
But tomorrow the world.
Yeah.
And they believed it, that their destiny is to rule the world. If I wrote in my article, Hitler would have won the war, you would have him here.
And maybe the only thing that stopped the Germans perhaps was the resilience of the British.
Well, in those days, he had people sympathizing with him.
In America too, Lindbergh.
You had Argentina, Brazil. You had Arabs who were cooperating with him. You had France, was the biggest collaborator with the Nazis during the Second World War. No other government cooperated so very much like the Vichy government, where the president was Pétain, and the prime minister was Laval.
Laval, yep.
And from Tunisia, the French warships and army were fighting the Americans. The French were fighting against America. But of course, the French are different people, and they won the war.
So rather than I think it's a more popular notion that the French rolled over and played dead to the Germans and just let the Germans walk in to their country, but it sounds like your thought is that the French, rather than rolling over and playing dead, they actually actively engaged the Nazis in a positive way.
Well, I mean, the French had no different possibilities than the other nations of Europe. And yet Europe, as much as they could, they were defying the Germans, the Nazis. And what was wrong with France? They had the same possibilities. Now they say, Viva la France. We had the underground, and we had this, and we had that, and we won the war. But actually, they never won a war. If not for America, French would never win the First War and the Second World War.
Yeah, the French underground is given a lot of credit, I think, in retrospect. Maybe, as you say, there weren't very many members of the French underground that really actively
The French underground was for Polish and all kind of different people, not just the French people.
Oh.
Well, French is a big country. French is
Yeah.
Fine people.
Yep, and they controlled, as you say, they controlled North Africa, but prior to the Nazis
They were
taking
fighting
over.
the Americans, also they knew that America wants to free them, to fight, to die for France.
Sure.
We died for France. And yet, that's what happened. That's history. It was a very bad time.
You're right, and I think after, you know, you lived in a very personal sense, but looking back on it now, you can look at it in a broader context of, you know, not just what was happening right there with you and your family, but what was happening on the world stage around it, and it's frightening that these things could take place in anywhere that humanity could ever stoop to that lower level to do these kinds of things. And what do we do as humans to try to prevent this from happening again? I understand that everything that's happened before probably at some point in future history will happen again. But what do we do to try our best to prevent it from happening again?
Humanity? I think humanity has it naturally in them to be rough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we do much not to repeat what happened. As a matter of fact, it happens now in many countries, Sudan, other countries,
sure, yeah,
where people, hundreds of thousands, are getting clubbed, not even shot, clubbed. Can we imagine? People are hurt and clubbed, men, women, children, because I don't know why. I still don't know why. Just as much as I don't know why they hate the Jews. Now what are we doing? What is a Jew doing? They say we control the world. How do we? Well, in the daytime I went to work.
I don't mean to make light of that, but you're right. People always talked about how when they attack and kill the Jews and commit horrible acts against them, they always say they're doing it because the Jews control them. You hear nowadays, you hear in my lifetime, the Jews control Hollywood, the Jews control government, and we know that's not the case.
Well,
what sets these ideas in people's minds?
Well, that's the danger with humanity. What's in their mind? What's in the mind of a Ku Klux Klan? What's in the mind of a Nazi in America? What does he want? Does he have a plan of creating jobs? Or does he have a plan of killing unworthy people?
And what in the world makes Jews unworthy in the eyes of these people? People
to look down at somebody else. I don't understand that issue at all. What am I doing? I worked in the daytime. I was making 75 cents an hour when I worked in New York in the beginning. How much money did I have left after paying taxes? I hardly could get by. Does it mean that in the daytime I worked for 75 cents? At night, as a Jew, I ruled the country?
And again, I laugh at, I'd rather laugh than cry, because my inclination here is to cry, because everything you say is true. It's just...
Every night I ruled a different country.
Yeah.
I'm ruling the world. If my neighbor is a doctor and he is successful, does he share his income with me?
Whether he's Jewish or not?
Do
no.
I have anything in common with him?
No.
If I'm his patient, he will help me. He will help you. He will help everybody. But if he gets paid and he has a good life, but I have nothing to do with another one. There is no such a thing.
Now, Jewish people in America, like Jewish people all over the world, they're mixed among working class, they're mixed among impoverished peoples, mixed among the more affluent classes. So they're not concentrated in any one class. They're not this monster or this powerful thing concentrated within the upper class, and yet somehow historically people that do things to Jewish people say we're doing it because we're afraid of them controlling us. Is it that people always have that something deep within all of us, that we have this need to have somebody weaker than us? Is that what it is?
I have no answer to these questions. What makes them thinking or feeling that some people are in a democratic environment, like in America, are a danger to them? If a Jew is elected in politics, he is elected not by Jews, he's elected by everybody.
Sure.
And if he is not elected, bad luck. It's not a tragedy. Nobody cries because a Jew lost an election.
Sure. Likewise, if a black man's elected, he is not elected principally by white people. We're going to have to wind it down now. If you have a couple more thoughts to share with our audience, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'd love to have you back for another show, because this is a lot of fun, in a very somber sort of way.
Well, these discussions, they are very interesting, but there is no answer.
Okay,
It does not make sense.
Okay, there's a lot that doesn't make sense in life, and we'll talk more about this and try to do something, whatever we can do to help make things better. This has been Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson. We have William Kaiser, author of An Optimist Without Hope, and I look forward to having him back on the show, because it's been a little bit depressing discussion, but it's something we have to address in life.
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah.
I'm not an optimist, I'm not a pessimist. I try to be a realist. Yeah. And to be a realist, I have no answer to those questions, because nobody came out with an answer as yet.
Well, I was thinking people, hopefully we can move a little closer to a semblance of an answer.
Hopefully, yeah.